What's poppin', y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Teed Up. I'm your host, Pierre, Pee Wee the Plug, Andresen. As always, we have a action-packed week of basketball talk for y'all. Today's episode, we're going to be introducing some things. We have a new segment called One Man Weave, where I'll be going around the association and talking about a bunch of different things that have happened over the last week. We also have Trade or Stay, which I'm excited for because I think trade season is upon us, and we got a handful of guys that we will ask, should they be traded or should they stay in their respective situation? And then to wrap things up, we have a fan favorite, Q's with P, something I'm excited for. I love seeing what's on y'all mind and talking with y'all. But to start things off, One Man Weave, something that I think I want the people to kind of maybe get involved with. If there's something that y'all are seeing around the league, feel free to tweet me, tweet Christian, or tag the Enjoy account, and we would try to see if it's a talkable standpoint or something for us to address. The thing that I want to start with first, I want to start off on a positive note. I thought about starting off negatively, but we'll save the negativity for the end of the segment. Cade Cunningham has recently announced in an interview with Kevin Durant that he is on his way to having his first signature shoe with Nike. To me, this is a very big deal. I am one of those kids who grew up not only playing basketball, but having the dream of not only reaching the NBA, but in my dreams, when I laid my head on my pillow, I was not just going to exist in the NBA. I was going to be one of those guys. I was going to be one of the top 5 players in the league. I was going to be the face of a franchise carrying an organization to the NBA Finals. And along that dream, I was going to have a signature shoe with, yes, Nike. So to see a guy like Cade Cunningham, who I've been following for years now, before he was in the NBA, back at Mount Verde to Oklahoma State, and to see his journey lead up to this, a signature shoe, is phenomenal. There have been a lot of great talents in the NBA. There have been a lot of good young talents. But to get that signature shoe, especially at Nike, is one of those stamps of approval that I just think any and every basketball player, even if you make the league, have dreamed of. And to see this young man in Detroit, which is right across the water. I always say the Detroit is our Lake Michigan cousins here in Chicago. I'm super happy and proud of him, but I'm also excited to see what the shoe is going to be like. I'm a shoe head, I'm a shoe guy, and I know I'm wearing Adidas right now. I'm not, brand loyal. Whatever's fire, I'm rocking. But Nike has been on a phenomenal tear. I love the Ja Morant signature shoes. I've always loved the lines from Kevin Durant and LeBron James. I think Devin Booker's shoe has been phenomenal. I have a bunch of pair of those. And then there's also Kyrie, Paul George, who are no longer signature athletes with Nike. I think they had some of the best Nike lines as well. And again, I think Cade Cunningham, from what I've seen, his Nike selection up to this point, his Nike PEs, the GT cuts he's been wearing, all have been fire. And he has an incredible logo. So that was a real dope story to see hit the timeline. And there's a lot of excitement in the basketball world right now. Cade Cunningham has become the beloved NBA player of the league right now. And it's funny because as a Cade Cunningham, fan or fanatic, wasn't that long ago where the timeline was in shambles, kind of say that, maybe Cade ain't like that. And to kind of see him beloved overnight is refreshing. I love it for Cade Cunningham. One of the other things we have to talk about is another guy that we are high on up here, a guy that gets a lot of flowers and a lot of love from the Teed Up movement. Jalen Johnson of the Atlanta Hawks has been named the Eastern Conference Player of the Week. He has had a phenomenal past few games, even longer than a week with the Atlanta Hawks. They're right now streaking without Trae Young. I don't know when the next time they're going to lose a game. That West Coast road trip that they had recently was phenomenal. They pulled out some incredible wins against the Clippers. They had an incredible win against the Jazz, a high-scoring win. And then the most recent comeback against the Phoenix Suns was super exciting, and it's all been, spearheaded by Jalen Johnson. And don't get me wrong, Nikhil has been phenomenal. Kongu has been great, and everybody's chipping in as a team. But man, it's been so dope to see Jalen Johnson kind of, step into his own and kind of lead the charge there. And I'm very interested to see Trae Young come back to this team and see how it all meshes in jail. And Trae Young will be a guy that will come up at a later segment in this episode. But again, I wanted to give some love and some flowers to our guy, Jalen Johnson, friend of the show, a guy that when I watch, a guy that when I see the success he's having, I think to myself, it is long overdue to have him on the show. Jalen Johnson will be on the show soon. I'm telling y'all. We're going to have Jalen Johnson on the show. Hopefully, Jalen Johnson can be elected into the All-Star game, and then we can make it happen. But Jalen Johnson, I'm telling y'all now, at some point, is going to be on this show, and it's going to be dope to look back and see the player that he's come into. And then the last thing I want to talk about, not the last thing, matter of fact, let's address a couple of things. We have to speak on the calf strain that Victor Wembanyama has sustained. He's going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks. This is something I thought about talking about. I thought about not mentioning, just because it's kind of like deflating for NBA fans. He is such a freak of nature. He's been so good. The Spurs are good again. And the way that they started off the season and then bringing in De'Aaron Fox, it's just another team, another fold into who could do something out west, who could be a threat to OKC. And to now kind of get him out for 2 or 3 weeks, it sucks. I'm not going to get deep here. I'm not going to try to make this a philosophy moment or talking point. It just sucks. You know what I mean? Like, I am kind of sick and tired of the talent of our NBA, being taken away by the same injuries. And it's nobody's fault. I don't really have any blame to pinpoint to anybody. I really don't want to blame the athletes, obviously. But Ja just went down with a calf injury. Anthony Davis is dealing with a leg calf injury. We already lost Tatum, Dame, and, Halliburton to Achilles injuries that kind of came from the calf injury. So it just sucks right now. I'm just wishing a lot of health to our superstars and the guys that are making this game exciting right now, because we've had a really great start to the season, one that has got me excited to come here every single week and talk basketball. I'll literally Friday, Saturday, or Sunday be watching and just be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait till Wednesday. We got a lot to talk about. And the last thing, this is the negativity part. A couple days ago, the New Orleans Pelicans fired head coach Willie Green. At the time, the Pelicans were 2-10. I understood the move, right? Because Willie Green has been there for about 4 or 5 years. Nothing was really changing. And to start the season, though they are injured again as a team, which is like, I feel like the 3rd, 4th straight year of this New Orleans Pelicans team dealing with like just so many detrimental injuries. It just felt like it ran its course. But for me, as an NBA fan, outside of the media, outside of being an analyst, I just hate the direction and the history of some of the teams that are in the situations that they're in. And I look at a New Orleans Pelicans team, and they're at like the forefront of that. They just, I don't know what to do for them. I don't know what to think. And again, when you have a platform like Numbers on the Board and Joy and everything that we're doing here, we have a community. And with that big community, there's a lot of fans from each fan base. And I feel so tired and exhausted and bad for some of the fans for some of these organizations. And the Pelicans fan base is one that just I feel for, because you suck right now. They're 2-12. Then what organizations love to do is sell BS. So they go and fire Willie Green and try to make it seem like this is a Willie Green issue, when at this point, I keep telling organizations, fans are much more intelligent than when I was growing up. When I was a young fan growing up, I knew what I knew, but I didn't know too much of the behind the scenes and, the making up of teams. Now you have everything at your fingertips, and your fan base is super intelligent and smart, and they're privy to whatever is going on. So you can't sit up there and say, we're just going to fire our head coach because we ain't meeting expectations, because there's nobody in the Pelicans fan base that had the expectations that apparently the Pelicans had. I mean, Gail Benson goes out and hires Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver after the situation in Detroit, and it made everybody scratch their head. There was nothing from their last tenures that made it seem like Joe Dumars or Troy Weaver was fit for this job. Then they go out and trade that first-round pick unprotected to the Hawks as if this team was going to be a playoff team, and now you're sitting at 2-12. You fire your head coach. Zion is missing games, and it's just a mess that I don't know what basketball mind can find a light at the end of the tunnel with. And they're not the only organization that finds themselves in this situation. And at some point, these teams gotta be held accountable, and we got to start having some basketball people, some basketball minds in here, because the product is suffering. And I just think that certain fan bases deserve more. And that's my 2 cents with the New Orleans Pelicans. We have trade or stay when we return from break. Now it's time for something that gets me excited all of the time. If you know me, if you know my content over the years, I am a big fan of the trade season. And it doesn't even always have to mean that we're getting the trades. I just love the rumors. I love the conversations. I love the perspective of team building and what makes sense for this situation and how would he fit here. It gets the basketball mind moving. So in front of me, I have a list of about 6 or 7 names, guys that are, star to superstar status. And we're going to decide if these players should be traded or should they stay in the situations that they're in. The first name that's on the list is one that's been ringing off for the last few weeks after the firing of Nico Harrison, which is Anthony Davis with the Dallas Mavericks. Now, there was a report that at some point Anthony Davis and his team would meet with ownership and they would figure out a plan on what the next move was going to be in his future with the Dallas Mavericks. Was that going to be them going with a trade route? Would that be during the season? Would that be in the offseason? Would Anthony Davis and his team say we would like to stay? How would the Mavericks ownership and front office think about that? We don't know. But for me, there is some intrigue in both sides of the coin. There is this thought process with the Dallas Mavericks that I could see where they sell themselves on the same thing that they sold themselves on last year. But even to a further degree, because now you can see the plan fully. Last year, with the bad season that the Mavericks had after the Luka trade, they didn't know that they would be getting the top pick, right? We have to remember this was a team that barely missed the play-in, so they were projected to have, the 10th or 11th pick, and it turned into the number 1 overall pick. But once you got it, it's like, okay, you bring Cooper Flag into the fold with Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, and, some of the other veterans we have. This could be something that can be intriguing. It has not gone well. Anthony Davis is injured yet again. Obviously, Kyrie Irving is recovering from his injury, and the team is just not playing at a level that a lot of us anticipated. But if you were to do it and attempt it for a second time, now we're talking Cooper Flag, one of these top players, depending on where this pick falls. We would like to believe that it would be a top 3 pick, but a lot of teams in the NBA are not playing well right now, so there will be a lot of competition to fight for as far as winning the lottery. But you can still fantasize about Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, Cam Boozer, Nate Ament. There's a lot of intriguing names in this draft class that I think the Mavericks would love to be able to pair with Cooper Flag. And if you can bring Cooper Flag year 2 with another intriguing rookie with high upside, and they are on the floor with Kyrie and Anthony Davis and Derek Lively, I could see some intrigue. But then on the other side is the expensive contract of Anthony Davis, the fact that he's only getting older, and then the injury history, which is why I lean more to Anthony Davis potentially being traded. I think it allows you to fully pivot and move away from the Nico Harrison situation. I think if there's a world where you can get a young player of some sorts, it doesn't have to be a star young player, but just somebody who you can bank potential on. And if you're able to walk away with a draft pick or 2 or multiple draft picks, I think that's a home run of a deal that the Mavericks can't fully pass on. There's intrigue in having young players come into a situation with other young players and kind of growing their games together. So for a hypothetical, you talk about Anthony Davis being traded to a team like the Raptors. Maybe the Raptors give you 2 picks and you can get a Jacoby Walter or Grady Dick, who haven't really had the greatest year this year. And yeah, maybe Grady Dick comes down on a Mavericks team that's struggling, that's fighting to win the lottery. So he just goes out there, finds some confidence and gets some developmental reps. And maybe you have something there. What about the Chicago Bulls? Could you get a Kobe White and some draft picks? And yeah, it might be some other moving parts to that trade, but the focal point would be to pair Cooper Flag with another core piece. And I love the Chicago Bulls. If I'm being completely honest with anybody, I think that there's a matter of time before Anthony Davis is a Chicago Bull. If I had any guess to what the next situation would be for Anthony Davis, it would be the Chicago Bulls. It just makes too much sense. From a representation standpoint, I don't believe Clutch Sports would allow Anthony Davis to not be in a nice market. I think the LA market we've already went through. The New York markets just don't have a team right now that, is going to be looking to acquire Anthony Davis from what I know. And Chicago makes so much sense. It's home. It's low expectations. Chicago is a team that I think wouldn't hesitate to pay Anthony Davis. They're going to welcome him with open arms because if anybody knows anything about the Chicago Bulls, they love having their own homegrown talent on the roster. And I think it's probably at the point where they're going to, part ways with Nikola Vucevic. And you can kind of convince yourself of the idea of Anthony Davis being a Bull. And so for those reasons, I lean towards trade versus stay when it comes to Anthony Davis and the Dallas Mavericks. This was a marriage that I do think has some type of intrigue and upside. There was a point where if you look at this team healthy, they were going to be all right. Still crazy to trade Luka. But to just see how it all has kind of, played out, very unfortunate for Dallas Maverick fans, but I do think you move on from the situation, you commit to kind of canning the season, and the intrigue of maybe pairing Cooper Flagg with another incredible high potential draft pick, I think starts a new era of Dallas that is worth their fan base getting excited for. The next guy on our list, another guy right now that's missing time, like I mentioned in the first part of the show, another calf injury. I'm so tired of hearing about these lower body injuries to our players. But Ja Morant out there in Memphis. Memphis Grizzlies have had a very tough start. They've already had some drama. Ja Morant right now is putting up career low numbers across the board in almost every statistical category that you can think of. Numbers that we haven't seen from him since his rookie year. And the more you look at this team, the more you ask yourself, how much more are they willing to invest in this? And at this point, it's not even Ja Morant. It's kind of Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson, and the whole shebang here. But there's this light that keeps, dimming more and more as these games progress. The coaching situation and the disconnect at the coaching philosophy of Tomas Isolo not resonating with his stars and Jaren Jackson and Ja Morant. All signs are leading towards trade. And it's not because Ja Morant can't get back to what he was at. It's not because he's not a good player, though I don't know completely sure if we'll see Ja Morant get back to that level. The game has kind of adjusted and moved on from that time when he was there. But I do still think he can be effective. And I think a Ja Morant that's motivated with a chip on his shoulder is a Ja Morant that could make you regret trading him. But the injuries have piled up, the chaos, the drama, the negativity with this relationship has ran its course, in my opinion. And you just fired Taylor Jenkins. And so I think it would be kind of crazy to fully invest into a team and a player that just has a disconnect with your head coach. And unfortunately for Ja Morant, as much as I love him and a lot of other people love him, the results haven't been there. And I think that's the issue right now for Ja, is that you have, these wants, you have these needs, these issues that, up until this point, Memphis has been fine with kind of acknowledging and giving you what you want. But now that the games played are diminishing, now that there has been some drama, now that there is a lack of success, Memphis Grizzlies kind of have to think about themselves over the Ja Morant show. And because of that, again, I think everything leads to maybe the trade side. My only pushback to trading Ja Morant or trading versus staying is the value. And I think that's the big topic for a lot of the guys on this list is Ja Morant, like some other names, has a particular play style. This is not a plug-and-play guy that you just acquire and drop into your lineup and you just get things going. What is also the value of Ja Morant at this point? Because, again, we know what Ja Morant is capable of. But because of the drama, the suspensions, the injuries, all of that different stuff, we haven't been able to see that. Is that because there is a hard decline? Is that because of the time missed? And so is Ja Morant worth 1 draft pick, 2 draft pick, 3 draft? And from the Memphis Grizzlies perspective, I don't know if they're ready yet to give up on Ja Morant for pennies on a dollar. I don't know. And maybe they'll surprise me, and maybe they will commit to getting just, a very basic bottom line package or return from Ja Morant. And then, it's the teams. It's the fit. When you look around the NBA right now, a lot of the really good teams or middle-tier teams, they have steady, good guard play. The Knicks have a Brunson. You know what I mean? The Cavs have a Garland, unless you're doing a swap there. But even then, the Cavs have to ask themselves, how does the backcourt of Ja Morant, and Donovan Mitchell look because of the particular play style? So this is one that I'm kind of in the middle of because you lean to trade, but then you see there's not many suitors. and it's very hard to figure out. Much more on Trader Stay after our break. And now it's time to show some love to our sponsors over at DraftKings. Y'all already know Pick Six, baby. Very simple. We're going to take 2 or more statistical categories, and we're going to go more or less from whatever players you like to see. Again, assists, rebounds, points, more or less. Very, very simple. Even I can do it. So for tonight's games, we have some interesting choices. Well, the first one is one that I am a little biased towards. We do have an injury going on in New York. My New York Knicks will not have Jalen Brunson. So for me, anytime I see the Knicks on the slate, it's an obvious choice to go more points for Karl-Anthony Towns. Cat has been phenomenal since Jalen Brunson has been down. Obviously, with no Brunson, a lot of attention offensively goes to Karl-Anthony Towns. He's going to be a guy that can shoot some threes. He's going to drive. He's going to get to the free throw line, second chance points. Hopefully, we get one of those big Karl-Anthony Towns explosions because we need a win, right? I was very disappointed with the game against the Miami Heat. We allowed them to come in and get one of those wins. But again, Karl-Anthony Towns, no Jalen Brunson. It makes more sense. This team right now also does not have OG Anunoby. So a lot of this offense is going through Karl-Anthony Towns. And again, when you talk about three-point shots, you talk about rim attempts. As a big fella, Cat is going to give you that even with the attention of the defense. The next one that we have is Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell is a guy that's been on a hot streak. He's been on a tear from a scoring perspective. But because of the Darius Garland injury that has kind of lingered around, I'm going to take more for Donovan Mitchell's assists. Right, assists. A lot of the attention that Donovan Mitchell has gotten, when Darius Garland has been out, I think has allowed him to, use his scoring as a threat to pass. And when you surround Donovan Mitchell with the Sam Merrills of the world, who can knock down shots at lob threat of a Jared Allen and even Evan Mobley, I think this kind of is tailor-made for Donovan Mitchell to be a high assist guy on Wednesday night's game. So Donovan Mitchell, who to me has been one of the most underrated players in the league when we talk about the stars who don't get mentioned. Everybody's talking about Wemby. Everybody's talking about Shea. We're talking about Giannis and Jokic. Cade Cunningham is getting a bunch of love. And all of those guys are, supposed to get that love. They're doing their thing. But for Donovan Mitchell to be having the season he's having, again, with this Cleveland Cavaliers team, who, when they don't have him, are not who they're supposed to be. And even with the injuries, Donovan Mitchell is doing a lot right there in Cleveland. So, again, we're taking the more on Donovan Mitchell's assists. Next, we have my guy, Shaedon Sharpe, against his hometown Chicago Bulls. I'm going to take the more over Shaedon Sharpe and his points. Shaedon Sharpe, over the last few games, looks like he is turning the corner and becoming a player that not only me, but a lot of Portland Trail Blazer fans were hoping to see this year. He's been on a tear. The shot is starting to fall. His ability to put pressure on defenses by, attacking the rim. Him and Denny have this 1-2 punch right now that is working crazy for Portland. They just need to find a way to now take these high-scoring performances and turn them into wins, right? They came out of the gate on fire. They grabbed a lot of people's attention, and the defense has always been there. Now they got to kind of figure out how to consistently get that defensive effort with these offensive explosions from Shaedon Sharpe. But against the Chicago Bulls team, whose play has kind of dipped a bit, obviously we knew that they weren't going to be able to sustain the start that they had to the season. I do see Shaedon Sharpe being able to kind of have his way against this Chicago Bulls defense. I don't really see anybody on the perimeter to fully take him out of his game, and I think Denny may get the Isaac Okoro assignment there. So I got Shaedon Sharpe with the more on his points. And then last but not least, we got Domantas Sabonis. Tough matchup for the Kings, but I always can count on Sabonis to be effective on the glass, and that's what we're taking his more. The Kings are struggling right now. They need to get some things going out there, and it's tough to kind of take the more on anything not Sabonis rebounds. I wanted to potentially do the points, rebound, assist, but then I thought about who he could be creating for to kind of get some assists, and the way that this Oklahoma City Thunder team defends, I don't necessarily have the confidence in the points for the Kings. But again, Domantas Sabonis being who he is, we're going to take the more on his rebounds. And those are my picks for you. For those of you who haven't checked out DraftKings Pick 6 yet, there's an exclusive offer waiting for you. Right now, new DraftKings customers can play 5 and get $50 in bonus picks. All you have to do is download the Pick 6 app and use promo code joy when you sign up. Pick Six is available in most states, including Texas, California, and Missouri. So don't be afraid to get in on action. Ride the upside with Pick Six. Picking back up on trade or stay, we have a few other names to get to. Kind of picking up on what is their value? Can they stay on the floor? And how much return could they get back? Zion Williamson. We talked about the Pelicans earlier in the show. Fired Willie Green. Was 2-10 at the time. James Borrego steps in, and they haven't really had any big changes since Borrego has stepped in. Besides, Derek Queen is starting, but from a wins-losses perspective, they're still losing by double-digit points. They're now 2-12, and Zion is on the sidelines again. Zion is very intriguing for a bunch of different reasons. Number one, there was an excitement coming into the year because it felt like he transformed his body, and we talked about that all offseason. Could this be the year that he gets it together? The preseason, he looked well. I thought he would be one of the guys leading the league in steals because he was moving so swiftly on his feet, light on his feet. We saw some 360 dunks. And we start the year, they're losing games, and before you know it, I think 5 or 6 games into the season, Zion Williamson hasn't played since. And they don't have their first-round pick again. It's hard to flip Zion Williamson because I don't know too many teams that are going to fully invest in a Zion Williamson trade. And if they do, please believe you're going to get very limited assets in return. And I don't know the method to get Zion on the floor, which is something we talked about on Numbers on the Board. You've done the load management. You've done the body transformation. He's took extensive time off. We've seen him miss practically entire seasons, right, on multiple occasions. And at this point, I just don't know what to do. And that was more so what I was saying earlier in the show about the Pelicans. Because the lack of value that Zion has, I think it affects the other pieces on your team. Because Zion doesn't have that much value, I think you may have to look at the idea of trading Trey Murphy III. I think you may have to look at the idea of trading Herb Jones. I think some of those things have to be on the table because the other option is sitting around hoping that Zion can put some games together and get over the hump and just kind of wait and wait and wait. But they say doing the same things and wishing for different results is insanity. And, you brought in 2 rookies in Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, and maybe you fully commit to those guys. But yeah, from the Pelicans perspective, I think all signs may lead to stay just because you don't have any other option on a trade market right now. I try to sit around and think of teams that would maybe willing to trade for Zion, and I don't even think any of those make sense. I remember Detroit was a team over the summer that teams talked about, but that was with the idea of Zion getting in shape and looking the best. We've seen him from a physique standpoint since he's came into the NBA. But now with the new added injury, hamstring injury, really no timetable, and with the way that the Pistons are playing, I don't think they shake things up to incorporate Zion. And we talked about Ja Morant and having a specific type of play style that you can't just drop into a 4-man group or a 5-man group and getting acclimated fast. Zion is a guy that you have to think about with spacing. You got to think about him playing off of your best player. It's a lot of different things that come in with the acquisition of a guy like Zion Williamson, and plus the price tag that you're going to pay, which I think is a bottom line issue that we're dealing with right now in the NBA around the league. A lot of the guys that we're talking about being available, the price point to acquire them is astronomical in a day and age where we have to worry about aprons. First apron, second apron. You know what I mean? Trying to aggregate contracts and make them match and losing the right to be able to do some of that because you're a second apron team. And, trying to bring in 45, 50, 55, $60 million in the trade, it's just become too difficult for teams. So a lot of that points to a guy like Zion Williamson ultimately staying. And again, I just feel for the Pelicans fan base right now, because a lot of the moves that they've made has just been poor management. And to be honest with you, nothing they've done gives anybody hope to kind of, be optimistic about what's going over there. Continuing with the theme of injuries and big contracts and play styles, LaMelo Ball and the Charlotte Hornets. LaMelo Ball is a guy that when he's on the floor, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to tune into the Charlotte Hornets. He's exciting to me. I love his game. I think there are things that he, needs to work on, and we want to see some of those things improve, sooner than later, because he's not this young, up and coming player anymore. This is a solidified guy, and the excitement that we've gotten off of the early seasons has us now wanting to see more of LaMelo Ball, not only on a regular season basis, but we also want to see him play in some of those high level instances. We want to see play-in games. We want to see a playoff series. We want to see Game 6, Game 7, and what he's capable of. We want to see if he can drag a team, through a series and prevail them or whatnot. But again, like Zion, like Ja, like Anthony Davis, this is a guy that constantly is losing games due to injuries. And with the draft class that the Charlotte Hornets just brought in recently, the performance of Cade Cunningham, some of the upside with Brandon Miller, who is now a guy that I think is kind of taking on some of that injury bug out there in Charlotte. How much longer does Charlotte commit their team to the health of LaMelo Ball? And even this year, he's missed time as well. And, you have to consider it. I like the idea of LaMelo Ball being with this group. Again, some of the games that we've seen with him and Cade Cunningham and these young guys, they're exciting. They're exciting. But I also understand that cloud of depending on somebody year in and year out to finally get over that injury hump or hurdle and to be able to be on the floor for majority of the games. And we've seen a lot of organizations invest in that and not get the return of their investment. And that kind of leads me to the trade pathway for LaMelo Ball and the Charlotte Hornets. But because there is a lack of value, because they're still not in a rush to do anything, this team is still relatively young, they can afford to be a little bit more patient, in my opinion, versus a New Orleans Pelicans type team, because the Hornets have their draft picks, because the youth is intriguing, because they haven't made too many bold mistakes. I like the idea of LaMelo stay, continue to invest in this young group, continue to hit on these draft picks, and give this team a little bit more time to gel. Give Brandon Miller. I'm so sorry, Brandon Miller. Give Brandon Miller a little time to get together as well, so we can see him, LaMelo, and Cade Cunningham on the floor together. You might have something super intriguing. There was a time, I keep trying to remind fans, where Steph Curry was in the same shoes as a LaMelo Ball with these, reoccurring ankle injuries. And I always think about, what if the Warriors would have gave up on him? And they did try in the Andrew Bogut trade. I think it was Steph Curry and not Monte Ellis, but ultimately the Bucks chose to fight to get Monte Ellis, and the rest is history there. But there are situations in careers where, a guy is injury riddled and there's some nagging issues, and it feels like, man, he can never get over it. But once he does, not saying that LaMelo Ball is Steph Curry, but there's some hope there and some reason to be optimistic. Our next guy, Trae Young, we talked about earlier. The Atlanta Hawks have been playing some of their best basketball of the season. Unfortunately, without Trae Young, and there's been a big discussion, are the Atlanta Hawks better without Trae Young? I will say they have been better. Over the last week or so, there is nobody in the world that can deny the fact that the Hawks have been better. But what I will say is the Hawks set themselves up to be better. Not to take anything away from Jalen Johnson, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and all of the guys who have chipped in on this current winning streak that they have and kind of turn the season around. But I do think we got to cut some slack to Trae Young. I do believe that this team had a lot to gel with, right? There was a new team with a bunch of offseason acquisitions to get acquainted together. And sometimes the start to that is bumpy. We even seen that happen in Orlando. And I think the excitement of something new, obviously the excitement of having some success, some instant success, makes the conversation a little bit more appealing to people. But I don't want to jump the gun too soon and just say that the Hawks are better without Trae Young, move on from Trae Young immediately. Because number one, like some of these other names that we've already mentioned, I don't know what the market for Trae Young looks like. They didn't extend him, so you don't have to worry about the money just yet. And I think the Hawks have Trae Young in a position to where they can get him to commit to whatever it is that they want him to do, right? Seeing the team have success without you can be humbling. It can check your ego. And again, he has an extension that he wants. Trae Young, from every, interview I see, loves Atlanta, wants to be in Atlanta. He's embraced the winning streak. I think this is an immediate stay, and I want to see both sides get together and ultimately have the success with Trae, because in the playoffs, you will need a dynamic guard like Trae Young to lean on in a half-court offense, and he'll be there. So, yeah, Trae Young, stay. After this break, we'll get into Q's with P, a fan favorite. We'll see y'all next. Now joining us on the show, producer Christian. He's here with one of our fan favorite segments, Q's with P. Let's see what the people have cooked up for me. I did not peek at this tweet at all. I actually forgot about this until you text me.
I want to start with a non-basketball question.
Okay.
If you had to bet on one NFL team to win the Super Bowl, who would it be?
If I had to bet on one team, it would be the Chicago Bears, for obvious reasons. Anybody outside of the Bears, maybe the Bills. I like the way that the Bills are playing. Josh Allen gave you a really great week in fantasy football, I saw. So I know you happy. Look at you smiling. Yeah, but maybe the Bills. Maybe it's their year. But, you got to remember, I am a basketball, baseball guy who likes the NFL, don't love the NFL. So don't take what I say and run with it. You know what I mean? I don't want nobody to take that and go bet on the Bears or the Bills.
But you know your stuff about the NFL. I just wanted to give you a chance to address the Ted McMillan situation.
Yeah, I got freaked out. KB has Trey Henderson, who went crazy. And I look and I'm like, man, Trayvon Henderson got 30-something points. I'm like, man, I need to do something. So I try to put in all my running backs. And then Trey Tucker from the Raiders plays against the Cowboys. So I'm like, I'm going to put him in because he could go off against the Cowboys' weak secondary. And, Tep going against the Falcons. And sure enough, I pulled a Christian. I tried to be clever and think too much, and it backfired on me. But I'm still good. Still good.
You are. I'll just say that in my league where I have Tet, I traded him this week. So we both missed out on the breakout.
I would never do anything like that. But yeah.
All right, back to basketball. Chase for 19 says, the Wizards have a lot of young talent, but they're 1-12. How do you know that the rebuild is trending in the right direction if they don't play a winning style of basketball? Do you begin to question the organization and the culture?
No, because when you're rebuilding, you're trying to get experience and growth. The best teacher in anything, not even just sports, is experience. And so you have a group of young guys growing and playing more minutes and getting more time. They don't know how to win. They don't know what it takes to win. And so you're not really looking at the wins and losses. It's hard to say that they're not playing winning basketball just yet because you kind of give them some grace. You look at it from the player progression. And I'm looking at Sarr take major steps in his game. I'm looking at Keyshawn George take major steps in his game. And you want to see more of that across the board. You want to see Bub Carrington start to get it together. You want to see some flashes and moments from Trae Johnson and Bilal. And that's kind of really what you gauge. In a perfect world, yeah, you would win a few more games here and there, which I thought they did last year. But yeah, I don't think you really gauge the wins and losses column too much when you're talking about a rebuilding team. And everybody that's on the team or that you think of as the core isn't the core. This is a time where the core defines itself, right? Where you have an Alex Sarr and a Keyshawn George separate from the young group, and you're able to say, okay, we know for sure those are staples and core pieces for us, and we will use the rest of the time to navigate it. We've seen a bunch of rebuilds or teams put together young group of guys, and before you know it, only 3 guys withstand all of the other changes. So it's a part of the process. And yeah, you just gotta look at the development and the progression of each player that you're banking on to be a difference maker in your future, in my opinion.
Another rebuilding question. This one is from @the Boston Pacers. What do you think of the Celtics' way of rebuilding, basically not fully taking, but taking chances on unproven guys? And is it something other teams should do? The result is either a lottery pick or a bunch of trade assets developed, proven by the Celtics. I think that question's asking, like, the kind of half in, half out. And I understand they're in a weird situation with Tatum, obviously, but any thoughts on what the Celtics, I guess, are doing?
Yeah, I don't mind it too much because there is a world where you can find some diamonds in the rough. And let's just be honest, it's very hard to go into a team locker room or whatever and, like, commit to losing. And the Eastern Conference is kind of down. and you could still maybe have some success. And I also think that there's a mental developmental phase that could happen as well. I think there's some benefit of maybe a Derek White or Jaylen Brown or Peyton Pritchard having more responsibility and doing more with it, and having, a confidence jolt in their game. You know what I'm saying? That when Tatum rejoins the team, because this team won't be the same even when Tatum comes back. There is no Drew Holiday, there is no Porzingis, there is no Al Horford. Some of these other guys got to now step up and be more. Peyton Pritchard might just can't be a little six-man guard that comes up. He may have a bigger responsibility. And I think this kind of shapes him up to having that type of responsibility or having that much on his plate. This gives Derek White, an experience of being one of the first options for defenses. And in the long run, that maybe can help. So I understand it from that process. And, maybe you get a combination of that and they still end up tanking indirectly. We'll see. But I don't mind trying to win games and put your best foot forward. Normally, teams have been rewarded one way or another with that type of mindset. So maybe the Celtics will have the same type of luck. And they're also a team that when Jason Tatum comes back, I mean, nobody was going to pass up on getting one of the top players in the class, but they won't really need it. It would just be like the rich get richer, but they don't necessarily need the number one pick or a top 3 pick.
Next question comes from Andreas. This season, the Heat are using the same offensive system Memphis tried at the start of last season. Everyone is rightfully praising them for it. But why is it working so well for them when it didn't work for Memphis? Is it the roster or something else? Is that true, though, that it didn't work for Memphis? Because weren't they the 2 seed for a lot of the year?
Well, it would have to be the first portion because the second half is what got Jenkins fired. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a lot of different things. Number one, the Memphis Grizzlies have Ja Morant. The Heat don't. And I think the Heat look fully committed to it. I think it's the roster and the players that they have. I think it's a lot easier to run up and down and do what they're doing. They don't have a Zach Edey. Their bigs are a little bit more mobile. They're a little bit more versatile. And whatever they did over the course of the summer, again, it was fully bought into. And I just think that the roster that they have, it complements it more. I talked about it in the first stretch of the season with the Heat. The reason the Heat are so good at it is because they have the size and skill set. So, again, when Jaime Jaquez gets a rebound, Bam gets a rebound, Jovic gets a rebound, Norman Powell gets a rebound, it's all the same as if they get the outlet to the guard. Everybody, Wiggins, they can push it up. I don't know off the top of my brain if, the Grizzlies had that to a full extent that the Heat have. I think this is perfect for the Miami Heat. I've seen Khalil Ware get a rebound and bring it up. But, Zach Edey ain't getting a rebound and pushing in transition. Santi Aldama not getting it too much and pushing into transition. These guys, they don't have that skill set full top to bottom like the Heat do. And the Heat, as of right now, they got guys sniping. Got Simone Fontecchio, all these guys knocking down these threes. It's just better with the Heat because of a roster construction, I would say. Yeah, a lot more faster, a lot more fluid and agile than the Grizzlies of last year.
Nutter331 says, what would be the perfect landing spot for each of the top 3 prospects? AJ, Cameron Boozer, and Darren Peterson. He notes it's early, but it's still a fun exercise. Where would you want to see these guys end up?
Okay. I look at a team like Washington, and I would not mind Cam Boozer there. I think that would be a fun front court of Sarr and Boozer. You also have Keyshawn George there. That's a lot of size. That's a lot of skill. A lot of guys that can play off of each other. I think there will be some really good synergy there. And you would also allow Trae Johnson to continue to just be that bucket, right? They could do a lot of the other things on outside of the scoring. Brooklyn, I like for a guy like AJ DeBonsa. I'm not going to lie. A building block. He gets to go into a team, get all of that confidence early. Big market, Brooklyn. They need somebody with some swag, with a certain pep in his step to bring some new energy into that building. I think he would do that easily out there in Brooklyn. And then I'm going to be honest with you, man. I'm intrigued with Darren Peterson and Cooper Flagg being on the same team to usher in this new era of the Dallas Mavericks. Seeing everything that the Dallas Mavericks went through, seeing, the results of that Luka trade and Nico getting fired, and now we're talking about landing spots for Anthony Davis and whatnot. I really would love to see them really get, I don't want to say rewarded, but be able to have something new to get excited about. And even this year, I mean, Nico did such a horrible job that as of late, it's been different, but the start of Cooper Flagg's rookie year just wasn't as exciting as you would think for a guy that we was deeming generational. So those would be my three landing spots for those guys for the start of next season. We are going to get into our break, but after that, we're going to wrap up with some more college basketball talk with producer Christian. That's next. To wrap up the show, we got producer Christian again. We got to do a college basketball check-in. Christian, I'm going to get to it very, very quickly and briefly. You last year told me, I think it was off camera, you know how Houston has, the reputation of getting there and not being able to get it done, but they just had a team that you could not get over. I feel like you from last year, this year, the combination of, experience and veteran leadership with this new youthful juice that they have, and Fleming and Cenac. I'm loving Houston. It's still early, but it's hard to not get excited. And I don't really liking the number one team, but they check so many boxes, man. Thoughts?
So you bring back 3 key starters from a team that lost by 2 in the national championship and went 35-5 last year, and the two new starters are first-round draft picks in Kingston Flemings and Chris Cenac, who combined for 40 in the win over Auburn. Credit to Auburn. They played really well in their first test of the young season under Stephen Pearl. With Houston, I still feel like you can put in pen that they're going to have the number one defense in the country.
For sure.
It's going to be just absolute hell to go up against them every night. And then offensively, I still think there's so much room to grow for Uzan, who hasn't been as good as he was last year to start the year. Isaiah Harwell coming off the bench. I want to see more from him. And Cenac's still going to get better. He shot 8 of 10 from the field, but he was hitting some tough, kind of fadeaways too.
Yes.
The game's going to come easier to him. And I still think Fleming's 22-7 against Auburn in his 4th collegiate game just shows you that he has more to unlock as well. So I'm really excited to see how good they can be with this mix of veteran talent coming back and guys that understand what Sampson wants to do so well, with the 2 freshmen coming along quickly, but give that extra ceiling just with pure talent.
That was one of my favorite things about Cenac when they talked about him on the broadcast. It's like he had this motor issue in high school or whatnot, but purposely chose to play for Coach Sampson because he's going to get coached there. I honestly think that this is the combination in today's college basketball. You have to have some experience with just enough of that freshman phenom stardom, and that combination has been leading to a lot of success. Staying on the subject of, freshman play, there's been a lot of talk about NBA players and their sons, right? Obviously, LeBron James and his sons, Carmelo Anthony and his son, Trevor Ariza has a son, Gilbert Arenas, the Boozers are Carlos Boozer's sons. Cade Anthony, through his first 3 or 4 games of his college career, has really taken me by surprise. I knew he was good. I don't know what my expectation was. But whatever it was, he's blown it out of the water. These first few games, he has been phenomenal. He went from coming off the bench to now he's a starter. He's putting up points. He's getting to his spots. The last game against Drexel that I watched, he looked like the man for them, even on a team that brought back Donnie Freeman. It looked like they were deferring a little bit to Cade Anthony. I don't know when, Christian, but this young man will be a pro. He will be a pro. I don't know if you've got a chance to see or what you think, but boy, I am to clip this and put the world on notice. Cade Anthony, tune in. He is worth watching.
Syracuse has been a big surprise to start the year. They've played a few cupcake opponents, but they've still rocketed up the computer rankings because they're unreal defensively. They have a really good defensive team athletically. William Kyle and Donnie Freeman in the front court give them a lot of optionality. So to have this little freshman spark plug, but more than a spark plug, he could, like you said, be their best scorer. So I'm really excited for him.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see the way that it progresses. The big key, though, is tournament play. Tournament play always is going to show us exactly who everyone is. And again, I'm not here to say he's a one-and-done talent. I'm not here to say he's a 4-year guy. I just know based off what I've seen, there's a palette of things that will get some intrigue. Hey, I appreciate y'all for tuning in for another week of Teed Up. I am Pierre. That's producer Christian. We will see y'all next week. We out. Peace.